This is a haunting in Saxonville, Massachusetts. Now, this happened when I was very young, but if you go on Johnson Street, which is just past the um, waterfalls, and you go up toward the end, it used to go to a road that would go up by the high school, but that's been closed for 50, 70 years. But when I was a real little kid, it was still being used. There was a rock quarry on the right, and if you followed down to the very end of the road with no explanation, there was a cellar hole. Now, this cellar hole had been there even in the 1950s for a long time because there were trees there. So, as curiosity got me, one day I was down there with my sister, and there was like a whooshing sound, really strange. Well, I went home and I told my aunt and I told her about it, and she said, "Don't go there. It's haunted." So I was like, okay. So I asked what happened. And she was born in 1887 and had lived on Johnson Street since 1900 or earlier. It might have been 1880s or so. But her whole childhood, she lived in Saxonville, lived until a ripe old age, and lived on Johnson Street the entire time. She said that there had been a house being built, and the father had gone out to do something, and when he came back, his whole family had burned to death, and they never rebuilt the house. Now, we used to go there, and we used to try to talk to them. This is before there were EVPs or recorders or anything. And one time, we saw like a fleeting glance, I would say, of like a shadow that moved across the cellar wall. There was nothing that could account for this. It was totally unnecessary. My second thing was that if you followed the path past that house, you came down onto the main road, which was by the waterfall and everything, but it was further past, say half a mile past. And for as long as I can remember, there was a house it was obviously abandoned, and it had an open window on the second floor with a shade hanging down. Now, this is 1960s, maybe. And again, I asked my mother and my aunt what could have happened down there, and she said a man had burned to death while he was smoking a cigarette. I'll never forget the place because it still had the brass bed and next to the window, and you could see it, and it just sat there for a long time. It's gone now, but that's what happened. My third story happened when I lived on Wesley Road. And Wesley Road was one of those common places that were built mostly for veterans and things. My parents bought their home in the 1950s, and I was going there to the park. Now, the park was at the end of the road. You had to go down the end of the road and ride down to the bottom of the hill. there you would find the park. Now, the park was having lots of problems when it must have been about 1957, and you had to be careful because there were teenagers setting fires. So one day, again, a friend of mine and I went down to the park, and there was just funny noises. I mean, scary noises, and we heard a voice that I cannot explain, but I can tell you that I rode on the gravel as fast as a 5-6-year-old could ride, and I fell, and I permanently embedded a small rock in my knee that stayed in my knee for until adulthood, and it finally came out when I saw the doctor. So it was like part of my body, and that is the park on the end of Wesley Road. Now, these are 3 stories of true hauntings in Framingham, Massachusetts. Of course, it's actually Framingham Center, not Framingham. It's Wesley Road is if you go down the street and you see the big Congregational church in the middle, you bear left, and like I said, the other places were from the 1890s. Thank you.